Good evening, everyone. Kyalami has always been a race circuit that puts the world into a world championship. The racetrack located in South Africa has hosted some wonderful and wild events over its 60 plus year history. Amazing corners, including Barbecue Bend and Mine Shaft, have all come about due to the unique nature of the location of the race circuit, and myths and legends have been created around this storied track. And the other element to say as well is that this circuit, one of the few in the world where it has run races in reverse. And just to add to that, more than once over its respective layouts over the last 6 decades, it certainly has thrown up all sorts of different challenges for races of that generation. But Kyalami, you might be interested to know, wasn't actually called Kyalami. It didn't really have a name to begin with. It's more to do with the surrounding area. But it comes from a phrase from the Zulus known as Kyalami, which actually translates into being my home. And I wonder if a driver tonight is going to be calling it their home circuit if they win, because we're here for round 13 of ACC Race Nation's GT3 Challenge Series for the 12th iteration of this wonderful championship. I'm Jack Millington, your commentator as always for the series. We've been following Dan Hatton undergoing qualifying so far as he gets his first lap time on the board. You'll notice some new names and faces in for tonight's action with 22 drivers on circuit. One of them just in front of us there on track at the moment. But we'll go through the newcomers because there are some very fast drivers who have appeared for the first time tonight. So that's going to be fascinating to see how they do. But let's get a overall look at the timing tower, shall we? Just so we can see where everybody is at the moment. So it is one of those debutants tonight who is currently leading the way on pole position, and that is Ellie Pocket making, I'm going to say her debut because that is a distinctly feminine name, is Ellie. She is currently on pole position with a 141.335 in the Ferrari 296 GT3. There she is in the background in the pink car there. So Ellie currently on provisional pole. Will Fielding in second place. The man who has been a revelation this season has Will since joining the series. He's been absolutely rapid in the BMW M4, but not on pole for the time being. We'll see how he takes up with that challenge. Mark Chapman, the championship leader currently, is in third place in the AMR V8. He's currently half a second off the pace. Rover Rakatamanga is back tonight. He's got it looks like a slightly different colour to his livery today. It looks more pink in the number 14 Lamborghini. So Rover on the second row of the grid at the provisional time. Jeffrey Van Buren is fifth, the last of the drivers inside a second, although having said that, one of the championship protagonists, Dan Hatton, we've just been following, strikes back in the Mustang, less than a tenth of a second behind Ellie at the moment. Dennis Penders is seventh in the 103 Ferrari. Rover Rakatamanga has just jumped up to second place. I feel like this timing tower is going to continue to change, so we'll just go through all the rest of the drivers. Simon Whiting is in ninth. Howard Dunn is currently inside the top 10 in 10th place at the moment, so it's really good to see him up there. And then the next driver we've got, well, we did have in 11th place, it was actually Nick Haug, but he's just dropped down to 12th. He's just been overtaken by Jordan there. That's not Jordan Harding, for the record. He's currently out running. But that would be Roland Jordan, the Hungarian, in another Mustang in the field, which is good to see. There's a couple of Mustangs out there on circuit. So we've got Nick Haug and you've got Roland Jordan in the reverse order of how I've just said. Danny Felix is 14th, with Byford Ree 15th. Zolt Barabas is in the Nissan in 16th. Lois Mangle is 17th. And then I'm going to assume it's no relation to Chris Harris. I could be completely wrong from Top Gear, but that isn't actually the case. It is actually Chris Harris. Oh my god! I've just checked my own notes really, just because I always like to double check who I'm talking about. But it is genuinely Chris Harris. I don't know if he presents Top Gear or did previously, but we'll have to have a chat with him afterwards. Mikey Keating is in the pits in 20th. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on tonight. And then another newcomer for this evening as well. That's Dougie Benyon in the 296 GT3. So a couple of newcomers in the Ferrari this evening. Seems to be a big split between whether the newcomers have gone for Ferrari or Mustang. And then Jamie Lee in 22nd. And one other driver I haven't actually had the chance to come on to just yet. That's John Gaudet in the number 88 AMR Vet. That's a cracking livery, that actually. Really nicely done, and love the highlighted stripes going on with the lime green there. So John Gaudet in 6th place, but at the minute it's Mark Chapman, championship leader, at the front of the field in front of Ellie Pocket, Rover Rakatamanga and Dan Hatton. Look how close the top 5 are though. There's just a tenth and a half separating them. Let's get out there. Let's try and follow one of the newcomers actually. We haven't done this before. Nick Haug is actually in the perfect place, so let's go on board with Nick, and hopefully he'll be able to adapt quite nicely to this championship. Good evening to you, John, in the comments there. But we'll ride on board with Nick as we hurtle out of the final corner of this really wonderful track here in Kyalami. So heading towards turn 1 at the King. Got to be careful not to hit that wall. And then in towards turn 2 at Crowthorne. Got to spot the braking zone, but he's on the grass a little bit, is Nick, going into left-hand. That's going to push him out wide and set him up a little bit offline for turns 3 and 4. Left-hander just continues to progress through the corner into Barbecue Bend at turn 5. And Nick just being tentative at the moment in these early phases. No harm with that. He blasts then towards Sunset at turn 6. Got to brake at the 50-metre board on the right-hand side of the road goes Nick to just follow the line through there, and then towards Clubhouse we come. Another long sweeping left-hander on this circuit over the curb, just a little touch of it, doesn't want to go too much over that. And then into the S's, another set of corners that have got to be approached very spot on. If you go slightly wide, it can throw the car all over the road due to the adverse camber. But Haug delivering a relatively solid line through there. Into the blind braking zone at turn 10, very tricky to brake here and get the line right. And as you can see, Haug was slightly off centre, which has just caused him to run a little bit off the road where he wouldn't have wanted to have been. But into turn 12, into Mineshaft, which is so steep, that's why they called it that. And then into the Crocodiles, quite literally in 13 and 14. Again, it's about spotting the braking zone, and if you get the line slightly off kilter, you can scurry off the circuit. Into the penultimate corner, where we'll see a number of cars go off the road at Cheetah, and then down through the final corners here at turn 16. He's just gone a little bit too deep, and that's going to end up in the barrier for Nick, and he'll have to get that back to the pits and try and get that fixed. So Nick currently 16th on the grid at the moment, which is not a bad place to be right now. I think that he'll be quite happy with that, but he'll need to get the damage sorted and go back through his best lap that he's done so far. Byford Roos out there. No Liam Watkinson this evening, sadly not in the right frame of mind, but hopefully Liam is watching so we can talk to him in the comments. And everybody else who is watching right now, less than 10 minutes to go in the qualifying session. And there's the Frenchman Rakatamanga just kicking up the dirt going into turn 15. That's a tricky corner that to get right. I see a lot of drivers sliding off there during practice, and they'll just have to be wary of that for this hour-long race coming up. There's Mikey in 20th place, not yet set a valid lap time, so Mikey just circulating, getting himself back to grips with the Lambo. And Chapman has been pushed down to 2nd place, and it's Ellie Pocket who's got provisional pole back, and she's the first driver into the 1 minute 40s. Now that is laying down a statement time in the Ferrari. I remember the last time we raced here at Kyalami, the Ferrari was very well suited to this circuit. Definitely lends itself well to the short, sharp blasts that are around this circuit and the quick changes of direction Just seems to be the right type of circuit for a mid-engined layout car. But Chapman will be happy with second place. He's in front of his main championship protagonist in the form of Dan Hatton. No Stuart Packham tonight, so it's looking like this is going to be a two-way duel for the Season 12 crown. Will Fielding just sliding out of the pit lane there, and Will must be thinking to himself, I'm not on pole here, what's going on? Will's had so many pole positions this season. I'd also argue, actually, that Will Fielding might not be out of this championship fight just yet. I know that he's missed 4 races, but his form has been scintillating. And the top 3 in the driver's standings, they've all missed at least 2 or 3 races each. So Will has... He's got to get a good result tonight. I think he's got to hope for a little bit of misfortune for Chapman and Hatton to have a true, realistic shot at the Season 12 crown. But don't take that away from his performances this season. He's been outstanding. There's Rakatamanga. Then it's Hatton in 5th place. And you got Dougie in 6th. John Godet in 7th. Steve Hall in 8th place. And Roland Jordan in 9th. And Simon Whiting inside the top 10. Roland Jordan, good friends with Zolt Barabas, so he'll be delighted to be in front of his good Hungarian friend. 2 Hungarians on the grid. What a time to be alive here in ACC Race Nation. Truly the home of multiculturalism within GT3 championships. I'm sure that'll be a little notch to the bow that nobody in the admin team would have expected, but still, it's nice to have. It's nice to have all different shapes and characters within the championship. There's Howard in 15th position, Nick Haug there in 18th, and Mikey has set a time, he's in 20th. Doesn't look like we've got Joe Warner in this evening either, so our normal quartet who would be fighting at the rear of the field are only represented by literally Byford Rue and Mikey this evening, so 50% of those drivers are out of the running at the minute. John, just give me some... this is a bit of information from my perspective and a benefit for all the viewers. Ellie, who's currently on pole position, have we ever had in the championship a female pole position winner at all, or is this a shorthand for Elizio and it's a bloke? No. Okay, so there we go. Ellie Pocket could be genuinely setting a new record within Race Nation tonight. So let's see how she gets on. Rakatamanga, though, has responded with a lap time that's less than 2 tenths away. Now, we've talked about Rakatamanga this season, about his performances, and he got that first podium. It feels like a lifetime ago, actually, now, because he's not been in the championship effectively since round 8. But all the way back at round 7, he got his first ever podium at Zandvoort. And he's seemingly just continuing to improve that performance. So let's see if the number 14 can go for that first ever race victory. I'm always rooting for an underdog. It's always great to have an underdog out there putting a bloody nose to the establishment. And Chapman's there. John Godet inside the top 10. The AMR seems quite well suited to this track. I also have to talk a little bit about ballast shortly. That's something that I do need to discuss for those that are watching. Because there are some specific circumstances that I will run through during the course of... I'll do it during the formation lap alongside the championship standings. But Howard Dunn, he had a really good race last week. It didn't play out the way that it should have done for him at Bathurst in the end. But I think there's more time to come from Howard this evening. I think there's better speed from him as well. He's down in 15th, and I don't think that's realistically representative for the South African, but there's still plenty of time to go in qualifying. Less than 4 minutes remaining. That's enough for at least 2, maybe 3 laps if your field and tyre pressures are in the right spot. There's Steve Hall in 7th. Seemingly we are over the hill now with these wheel issues for Steve. We're starting to see a bit more representative speed from the Season 8 champ. Yeah, if we have a I think about Steve's performances since he's got everything sorted. He has had a podium and he had a 4th place as well 2 rounds ago back at Suzuka. He's had some solid performances since he got on top of everything. Maybe we'll see a proper challenge from him in season 13. Ooh, he's currently challenging the lawnmower team at the moment, going through the right-hander there. But gathers it all up together, which is the most important thing. Danny's Outenby is out circulating as well in 11th position. I feel like Danny's performances in qualifying this season haven't been as electric as they were when he won the championship back in season 10, but his race pace is still there. He's still very strong. He's another driver who he had a bit of difficulty last week. He didn't quite look at the races actually, did Danny, last week at Bathurst. It just looked like a little bit of an off-kilter performance. But outside of that, I'm going to say that was a blip, because the rest of the season, since he's been back in the Ferrari, he's been spot on, driving really, really strongly. But it's still Ellie Pocket at the front. Could be the first female pole position sitter in ACC Race Nation. She's just about 2 minutes away from that. As Dougie goes up to 8th position in the... I like the gunmetal grey flat livery that he's got going on there. That's quite nice in the 177. But we did have a flurry of activity as the drivers left the pits at the start of the session. And now we're coming towards the close. So let's have a look through the drivers. We've got John Goday going into the left-hander, into the effectively the mine shaft and into the crocodiles. He'll be the next driver to set... Well, he would have been the next driver to set a lap time, and I think that's qualifying done. Dan Hatton won't be any higher than 6th place on the grid, so he leaves himself a little bit exposed, I think, for qualifying. And Simon Whiting back for the first time in a few rounds. Nice to have Simon back. He's in 9th place. He's not going to improve. Will Fielding, penultimate lap this for the M4, and what does he do as he comes across the line? He does go quicker, but he will sit in 4th position for the time being. And of course, Will is carrying ballast, and that is it for Will. He's decided he's not going to improve on that lap. Rover Rakatamanga, can he get his first pole position in the series? He has been in the top 4 before. This is his best so far. Stays in 2nd place for now. Steve Hall, the next to come along the circuit. That's not an improvement from Steve, but he's got one more lap. What about Dougie Benyon? Can he get himself up off the 4th row of the grid? He continues on. Jeffrey Van Buren can spring a surprise, Jeffrey, and he does move up to 12th position. So that's where he is on the 6th row of the grid. Howard Dunn, can he bring that AMR a little bit higher up in the order? Not quite. Nick Haug there in 19th in the background. No improvement. Chappers doesn't improve either. And I'm just looking to say that's Zolt Barabas who came across the line. So that's it for qualifying. So Zolt got through. He's going to be able to set this final lap. So it's Mikey Keaton we're waiting on. In 20th place. He'll be the first of the drivers to see the checkered flag. He's got Ellie Pocket just behind him. And we'll see what the closing speed is, because Mikey currently 5 seconds off pole position at the moment, so that might impact what Ellie can do. And Rover Rakatamanga has gone into the bits, as has Chapman, so Ellie looking like getting that first pole position as Mikey comes through the final 2 corners, being closed rapidly by the pole sitter. Oh, and he's just had a little wobble through the corner. I'm not sure how much that will have impacted Ellie as they both blast towards the start finish line. Mikey does improve, to be fair to Mike. And Ellie doesn't go any... She does go faster. My correction. She does improve. So she just knocks the ballpark a little bit further away. Steve Hall's going into the pit. So we are now looking at Jeffrey Van Buren. He's got to try and find 1.3 seconds to get to the front row. And that's going to take some effort to do that. But Ellie Pocket could be on her way for her first ever pole position by a woman in the championship. What a story that could be. But what about Van Buren? Good lap from Jeffrey at the end. Puts him into the top 10. That's much more representative from him. Nick Haug, final corner for the 25. He's just on the tail end of Danny Felix, who's still living off those heroics from last week at Bathurst. What about Zolt? Can he get there? After Nick goes to 17th and Zolt stays in 13th place. So, well done. What a performance for pole position, going the way of Ellie Pocket. Fabulous work from Ellie. She's got the first pole position of her championship career at ACC Race Nation, and also the first for a woman in the series. Congratulations. That's really wonderful to see. From memory, in terms of second place, it's Rover Rakatamanga on the front row of the grid. He'll be excited to start there. Joint best ever pole position for Rover, memory serves me correctly there. Third place is championship leader in the form of Mark Chapman, with Will Fielding alongside him on row number 2. John Godet is 5th with Dan Hatton in 6th position. Steve Hall and Dougie Benyon are on row 4 with Jeffrey Van Buren and Danny Zoutenbayer inside the top 10. Simon Whiting is in 11th place for the first time, seeing him in the championship for a few rounds. Then it's Roland Jordan in 12th with Zolt Barabas in 13th, the Hungarian alliance there in the 6th and 7th row of the grid. Dennis Penders is in 14th with Howard Dunn and Jacob Byford-Rue on row number 8 with Nick Howe and Jamie Lee on row 9. Danny Felix and Mikey Keating rounding out the top 20. Lois Mangle not setting a representative lap there in the BMW. He's 9.5 seconds away is Lois. And Chris Harris, whether he's as quick as his Top Gear compatriot, we'll have to find out. No lap time set from the Mustang, but he did look quick in practice, I have to say. So we'll wait and see if he can translate that into a good charge through the field. Hello to everybody who's commenting. Clips V8 says, sorry gents, haven't made it from work in time to get on or sign up. That's a shame. Hi to Jacob. Good to see you, Jacob. Hope you're doing okay. Mikey saying this is going to be horrible. Mikey, as I said to you last week, all I want from you today is another race result. Get some points on the board. It's about getting that experience. That's what it's about. So we are less than 2 minutes away from the race start here at Kyalami. Literally does put the world into world championships, because without it, you're missing out one of the biggest continents in the world. But I'm just going to take a breather, and I'll be back in about a moment's time. I say a moment, a minute's time, to go through the formation lap and the championship standings.
Seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
So then, the formation lap is underway here at Kyalami. The drivers just starting to pull away from their grid boxes. And this is going to be a stacked field for round number 13 of season 12. Ellie Pocket leading the field currently, Chris Harris at the back of it. But whilst we watch the drivers curve their way through the first couple of corners, I'm just going to go through the top 10 in the drivers' standings. So it's Mark Chapman who got control of the championship lead thanks to his second place result last week at Bathurst. He's on 261 points, 2 clear of Dan Hatton on 259. The other protagonist, Stuart Packham, sadly not here this evening. He's on 254, but I fear that he will slip away from the Drivers' Championship fight now with less than 2 races to go after this one. Will Fielding has an outside chance in 4th place on 238, but it does depend a little bit more on the misfortune of those in front of him. Dennis Penders, after his brilliant podium last week at Bathurst, is in 5th on 237. Jeffrey Van Buren is 6th on 216. In 7th place, incredibly still inside the top 10 despite having not been here since round number 9, is Jordan Harding on 207 points. I've said it a few times, but I really do think what might have happened had Jordan been competing for the rest of this series. Who knows? Matt Phillips, after his brilliant top 5 last week, sadly not here this evening, the Canadian, he's 8th on 186 points. Davy Zoutenbayer is 9th on 180, with Howard Dunn in 10th on 178 points. Now, I've just got to give you a little bit of an update on the ballast situation for the championship, because all the drivers who finish in the top 3 from the previous race have to carry that ballast on. However, drivers who have missed an event, such as Dan Hatton or Hartle Toby, after scoring a top 3 position, also have to carry that ballast as well. So what you've got right now is Will Fielding, who is 4th on the grid. He is carrying the full 30 kilos of ballast. He's not the only one, though, because Dan Hatton is as well in the Mustang. He won at round 11 2 weeks ago at Suzuka, missed last week at Bathurst, and he's carrying that today. Mark Chapman was 2nd last week at Bathurst. He is carrying the 20 kilos of ballast. He is saying that it's an absolute nightmare to try and carry around here. And then in 3rd place, third place from last week, carrying ballast, is Dennis Penders, who is a little bit further down from his normal qualifying position. It's only the 2nd time ever that Dennis has carried ballast in the championship, so he's probably still getting used to that. But the drivers have just come around the final corner. Ellie Pocket is going to lead us away as she crosses the start-finish line any second now. And the race is live here from Kyalami. It does look like a very good start from Will Fielding, who blasts his way up to 3rd. And Ellie Pocket is going to defend the inside line as we come towards turn number 2. Heavy on the brakes then into that first braking zone of the corner. Rakatamanga's on the outside and he's been... Unbelievable drama on the opening lap. Rover Rakatamanga got turned around and Dan Hatton also did as well. So the championship is going to swing on the pendulum because Mark Chapman is in 2nd place and John Gaudet has had a glorious start up into 3rd. He was down in 8th position and he's called the bluff perfectly and picked a place to put his car. Steve Hall's 4th, Will Fielding's 5th after a lightning launch off the line, Dougie Benyon's 6th, then it's Simon Whiting, Jeffrey Van Buren, Zolt Barabas, and Roland Jordan has got himself into the top 10 as well. Looks like there's a bit of fighting going on there with Jamie Lee and Nick Haug. And you've got Chris Harris just behind him. Danny Felix. Oh, and he's been collected as Danny Felix by Dan Hatton. The two Dans come together. That is, I promise you, that's not a comedy sketch. That is a horror show at the start of this race for Dan Hatton. But not for Ellie. She has had a glorious launch. And she is flying away at the minute as Simon Whiting goes off the road at turn number 14. Gets back on track. Let's get out there and see what's happening out on circuit. Here's on board with Dougie in the Ferrari. He'll be delighted with that launch. Into the right-hander at turn 1. Looking at the inside of Will Fielding here. I don't think he'll go for a move, but he does brake quite late into the corner. Steve Hall runs a little bit deep. It's not the ideal line that you want to take through there. There's Dennis Penders up to 11th from the starting position that he had. I think he was 15th on the grid. And is that Yeah, I think it is Dougie Benyon trying to find a way past here. The debutant feeling very racy in these opening exchanges. Going to look to the inside line at the right-hander. But I don't think he's going to find a good move at Sunset. It's not normally a corner to overtake at. Will he try and catch? Fielding unawares. Yes, there you go. He got it a little bit wrong, and Will Fielding slips down to 6th place. Make that 7th place. He went off the road. I think Will got caught out by Steve Hall's braking there. Not that Steve did anything wrong, but Will Fielding in the pack, having a bit of strife here, and he's dropped to 7th after starting 4th. Not the ideal start at all for the number 22. Carrying that ballast early on as well. And Mikey Keaton sadly has gone round. That's a peculiar place to have gone around there. I wonder, and I hope he's not had a little bit of help to turn him around. Look at Jeffrey Van Buren, who's got up to 8th position. There's Will, the recovering Will Fielding. Roland Jordan in 10th place. There's Chris Harris. Well, it would have been. Just couldn't see him. And Dan Hatton's got back up to 15th place. And he's front of the second group. So Dan now just needs to get his head down and get on with it if he can. Danny Felix, after his spin in 20th, trying to flick through the drivers. There's Rakatamanga. What a nightmare start for him. He'd had such a good qualifying. And there is Mikey at the back of the field. No damage for Mikey, so thankfully he's not hit the wall, but I know he's going to be frustrated at that. And Mark Chapman's in the lead. Mark Chapman, we haven't seen it, but Ellie Pocket has dropped from 1st to 3rd, and John Gaudet has moved into 2nd. There are a number of Aston Martin fans watching this race tonight, and they've got a top 2 at the minute, which is what they've hoped for all season. Dougie Benyon now putting pressure on Steve Hall, who always seems to be in this opening exchange, just seems to be under pressure from everybody right now. Everyone's trying to find a way through. Well, Chapman leads the way. There's Gaudet. Then it's Ellie Pocket. We'll have to go back through the replays to find out what happened to her, as Benyon closes right up under the brakes at turn 10. He's on the inside, coming into the mine shaft. Ooh, and Steve just had enough room to cover that one off. But I think he's compromised himself there by doing that. That was a very tight line. And here goes Benyon. He knew that was going to be the case. He dives to the inside, and that is a really good bit of car control to place the car there. But he has left himself vulnerable into the penultimate corner, and they've made a little bit of contact. And then Steve turns him round, and Benyon, just about keeps it out of the... No, and then there's contact, and there might be more contact with another driver. And he goes back to the pits, and I think that was an incident that sadly could have been avoided, and sadly that great start for Dougie has dropped him into the pit lane. That was significant damage. He did get clipped by Van Buren, who's just been overtaken by Barabas, but Van Buren's trying to protect that 7th place, but that will be significant damage on the Ferrari. It was just an innocent victim in that. It's brought Simon Whiting up to 5th place. It does say he's in 4th. He's not actually. He's behind Steve Hall. But Simon, who was just on the fringes of the top 10, has brought himself right back into play here. I've seen Simon race very well around Kyalami before, but something's not looking quite right with Hall's car at the minute. He seems to be bouncing a little bit all over the place, more so than other Ferraris. I'm not sure if all is well in that number 5. But Van Buren's got this group now. He's got 4, 5, 6 cars all behind him. I normally use the words frenetic. Oh, is that... I think that was Simon Whiting running wide. And Fielding couldn't take advantage of that. I was just about to go back to this group at the top of the hill. So we've got Danny, who's right in the middle of this. And we look to see how Van Buren is getting on trying to defend. Roland Jordan also in this group, and Chris Harris has brought himself up to 14th position. Ooh, that's a little bit wide from the Ferraris at the penultimate corner. Ellie Pocket just there in 3rd place. We ride on board with Van Buren. The Nissan is pretty quick in a straight line. It can shake a leg. And you can see Van Buren moving into the middle of the track, but Van Buren kind of left the door open, and he's sent the invitation to Barabbas, who's going to claim it in his honour. He's going to be on the outside line for turn 3, but he'll have the inside for 4 and 5, and the Hungarian moves past the Dutchman, but he's got it all wrong into the left-hander. He's going to skate across the road, and Van Buren snatches that position back. I'm just looking, is Dennis Penders close enough? He has gone through, and Roland Jordan went through, so in fact that's gone worse for Barabbas. He's gone from 7th to 11th, because there's Danny Zoutenbayer solidifying a place in the top 10. But Van Buren is definitely struggling. That damage is seriously hindering him now. On board with Penders. There's so many battles and fights going on all around the circuit at the moment. It is challenging to try and stay on top of it, but I'm going to stick with the sextet at the minute. As Jordan bravely went to the inside of Van Buren there. We've got Danny Zoutenbayer right behind us in the screen on the middle of your picture there. As we go into Mine Shaft and then towards the Crocodiles. And into the right-hander, over the curbs they go. You can see Zoutenbayer eager to get on with it in the Dayglow yellow Ferrari behind us, but no way through. Difficult right-hander, and you can see the car just of Penders just jumping a little bit over the curb and unsettling it, and I think there's been a change of the lead. Whilst we've been watching that, as Chris Harris has got... Oh, Harris has got significant damage. That's going to require a pit stop to fix that. And Zolt Barabbas wants to go through for the spot in the top 10. Zoutenbayer's going to try and go around the outside, but this is a place where contact can happen. And Roland Jordan's also trying to look for a way through. And I think Roland has done it. He has. He's got through. This time he just needs to keep the car on the circuit. And Barabbas gets scared off the road by the home hero. Howard Dunn, let's not forget, a South African in front of his home fans. They'll be delighted at that. They'll be thinking he's got some form of voodoo. Just absolutely scared the Nissan off the road. I've not seen that before. But Barabbas will want to strike back. I know that Zolt is someone who likes to put his foot in. I don't like to give up positions easily. And I was right. John Gaudet has got the lead of the race. So that has occurred whilst we've been watching these fights. And Jacob Byford-Rue's just gone off the road. So that's not ideal. Rakatamanga's recovery driver's got him back to 13th. And the next set of cars he's got in front of him is that sextet fighting for a spot in the top 7. So there's still a good recovery drive on here for the Frenchman. They're only 10 minutes into the race so far. Plenty of time for him to come back at that. And Danny Felix has gone round. So that's brought Dan Hatton back into 14th place. So the two spinners on the opening lap, they've got a way back into the race now with clear air. But I know for Dan that's going to be really challenging. We have got... I believe we've got a retirement from the race. But there's proof right there. John Gaudet in the lead of the race. And that is, sadly, a drive-through penalty. And that's going to be for the number 66. Which is certainly not what you want at this point in the race. That's for Chris Harris after trying to fix his damage. And Chappers is under all sorts of pressure from Ellie here. The debutants are taking it to the establishment. And look at the movement in the Ferrari there behind him. Doesn't know what to do. He's really... I don't know if Chappers has had a moment off the road, but look at this. It's brought Steve Hall into contention now for a podium spot. And John Gaudet is nearly 3.5 seconds up the road. Simon Whiting's right here as well, but Chapman goes very defensive. Into the left-hander at turn 10, and Steve Hall is fully involved in this fight now. Out of the turn 11 corner they go. Into Mine Shaft we go. But that Ferrari looking very, very feisty. And it just seems there's so much more agility coming from that car. It just seems really well poised and delicately balanced. Ellie is certainly flinging the car, trying to find a way through. But she's got the approaches now of Steve Hall, who we're on board with, to try and contend with. This is not just a two-car fight for second. This is a I'm going to say a 4-car fight, because you can see Simon Whiting and Will Fielding realistically is there as well. Danny Zoutenbayer now becomes the next driver to try and have a go at Van Buren. He's going to move to the inside line. There's been more overtakes whilst that's been going on, but Zoutenbayer is going to brake too late. And will Van Buren reappear in front of us? Yes, he does. There has been an incident, actually, because I think Roland Jordan's dropped to the back of the sextet. In fact, it's a quintet now because there's a car missing. I'll have to find out what went wrong in that fight. There's been so many points of action, and Ellie Pocket has found a way through. The pole sitter is up to second, and now she's got to find 4 seconds on the race leader. And Dan Hatton spun just whilst we were talking. Dan Hatton, one of the big championship protagonists, is going to be losing a severe amount of points to Chappers at the moment. Chapman looks like he's got no speed at all. He got into the lead of the race, looked really comfortable, and then out of nowhere it just seems the car has completely lost performance. It's almost unexplainable. Van Buren is still hanging on in 7th place. He's still got Zoutenbayer very close to the back of him, and he's trying to find a way past, but he's going to go around the outside line this time. He's going to sail off the road, actually, and that is not the ideal line for Zoutenbayer, and Penders will be the next driver to try and have an attack on Van Buren. These guys now 9 seconds away from the leading group. It is changing everywhere you look. Will Fielding at the back of the quintet for second. I wonder if it was just a moment for Chapman that's brought him this. There's Hatton down in 16th place. He hasn't hit anything. He's just had a spin coming out of turn 5. But for Dan, this is going to be chastening for him. He's just got to find that rhythm again. Zolt Barabas down in 13th place. Simon Whiting now feeling like he's ready to go on the offensive. And Chapman has now pulled away from Steve Hall. This is everywhere I look, action happens elsewhere. It's just one of those evenings, I think. Simon's still a little bit wide there, just to compromise his run through turn 9 out of the S's. And Ellie Pocket has just brought the gap up to 1.4 seconds from Chapman. So Ellie now finding her feet and is going to go after John Gaudet, who is the surprise race leader. I know, don't forget, John Gaudet started in 8th place, I believe. He was definitely on the 4th row of the grid. And he's now leading and has led more than probably anybody else has in these opening 15 minutes, but don't put it past anything else happening in this race. It's absolutely wild. Chappers has gone wide at the penultimate corner. That's going to put him offline for turn number 16. That's wide from Whiting. He got a little bit gathered up. He's gone into the gravel trap. And Will Fielding, let's see what his racecraft is like. And will he be able to send the late one up the inside at turn 1? Whiting moves to the middle of the circuit, just to fend off any potential advances into the corner. And he's been hit by Fielding, but just about keeps it all together. Last thing I want to see is anybody get turned around through an incident. Oh no, and Whiting's in the wall, and you just saw it happen. I said the last thing you want to happen is for someone to get turned around, and sadly for Whiting, he turned himself around, and Simon is going to plunge down the field, which brings Jeffrey Van Buren into 6th place. So just despite having that big contact earlier on with Dougie, he has found himself into the top 6 in front of a huge train that he is promoting. Let's just have a little let's have a little rejig of where we're at the minute. So John Gaudet still leads, but Ellie Pocket is catching him now. So Ellie Pocket, fastest driver on the circuit, 2.4 seconds away from the Aston Martin. Catching is one thing, passing is quite another though. Chappers is 3rd, with Steve Hall in 4th. Will Fielding is 5th, then Jeffrey Van Buren leads this. It's become a snake of cars now, because you've got it all the way back to Rover Rakatamanga, who's only a second and a half behind this group. So it's Van Buren, then it's Dennis Penders, then it's Zoutenbayer, then it's Dunn, that's Roland Jordan, then it's Simon Whiting, then it's Rover Rakatamanga, and Zolt Barabas is there as well. 6th through to 13th. Then it's Byford Root, who is currently fending off Nick Haug and the recovering Dan Hatton. I'm just wondering if Dan is going to try and send it down the inside. Oh, that was late from Nick. It was timed just to perfection, but it was late. It would have certainly brought Dan's attention, Sparkle, but Dan's placed the car quite nicely. He's going to be on the inside for turn 15, and he goes through. So, good defence that. Good defensive shape from Haug, but couldn't keep on to the hold of the position in the end, sadly. So Hatton moves himself into 15th, but he's got a lot of time to try and find on the group that are all squabbling over 6th place. No longer, because it's Dennis Penders who's now at the front. So Dennis has found a way past, and now Howard Dunn in front of his home fans in 8th position here. Oh, tell me about it, John. I don't understand why I have the commentators curse. I just praise people and then they get it wrong. If they're listening whilst this is going on, it's going to their head. I think Danny Zoutenbayer's just made a mistake. He has. He's going to jump over the curb. Is he going to spin around? He just about gathers it up and somehow comes out of that in, I'm going to estimate, in 10th place. And Simon Whiting always hit the back of Roland Jordan and then compromises Howard Dunn. And Rover Rakatamanga has found himself now inside the top 10. They go 2 by 2. It's like Noah's Ark towards the mine shaft. Into the left-hander they go. Roland Jordan just about holds the position. Although the race director and the cameraman don't really want to look at the action. They'd rather look at some walls. And rather frustratingly, we've managed to lose... There we go, because that happens for some unknown reason. There we go, we've got everything together. So Roland Jordan got hit into the back of by Simon Whiting, who's kind of forced him up into 7th place. Don't know if he wanted to be there, but he is now at that speed. So Jordan in 7th, Simon Whiting is 8th, then it's Zoutenbayer, Rakatamanga and Zolt Barabas, who's now coming back at this group. And Barabas is going to be on the inside at turn 2. That's very late from Rakatamanga. He nearly ran into the back of Zoutenbayer. And Barabas moves into 10th position. I was going to show you all the replays, but we haven't had any opportunity for this to have settled down just yet. I have to say, I'm surprised with Simon's car, though. He hit the wall relatively hard there, but he's staying competitive enough, so... Whether he'll be able to maintain a spot in the top 10 after he fixes his damage is to be seen, but he's still there. And look at this, as a result of all this fighting, Dennis Penders is now 3 seconds up the road from the quintet. Astonishing, realistically. Absolutely spectacular racing in the opening hour of this race. Oh, and Zoutenbayer's off the road at the right-hander of the S's. He has retained 9th position. But Barabas is up the inside. We ride on board with a Lamborghini. I think Barabas is going to be through at the mine shaft into the left-hander. Zout, to be fair, just holding that position, but he had to brake a little bit earlier. Otherwise, he would have T-boned into the side of the Nissan. So, Danny drops back to 10th place. And Rakatamanga now in 11th position. And he's going to go into the pit. I think that's a good time for Rover to go in. He's seen that this group is fighting so hard. He's quicker than all of them, in theory, from his qualifying pace. So the Frenchman goes into the pits. Jeffrey Van Buren pitted as well. We didn't see that. Mikey running in 18th place. Mark Chapman now, he's kind of running in a status quo with Steve Hall. Those two are balancing one another out, with Will Fielding shadowing the pair. And it's been a wonderful opening 22 minutes to this race. It really has. Lots of action, lots of battles, all up and down the field, all over the place. But the debutants and the debutees are owning the field at the minute. John Godet and Ellie Pocket are the top 2 on their debuts for ACC Race Nation. They've joined at the right time for the championship. So the Aston leads, and then it's the Ferrari. She is steadily closing that gap to the number 88. We'll see whether there's going to be a big fight come the pit stops before or after. We'll have to see. Howard Dunn is in 11th spot. He's gone backwards, so we haven't seen what's happened there. And Steve Hall has, after having the status quo, has decided he doesn't like that music. He prefers UB40, and he's in with Mark Chapman for a final spot on the podium. Everyone is running very wide out of that final corner. I don't know if they've painted on the gravel there at that corner, but it does seem like it's not really slowing the drivers down. But Hall is looking very quick at the minute. He certainly has momentum with him. He's just set his new personal... It looks like it's invalidated the lap, but it definitely was his personal best on that last lap. So Hall now trying to find his way through, and that's Zolt Barabas going past Simon Whiting, who's clearly limping along with the car. And Zoutenbayer, that's late from Zoutenbayer. Whiting saw him. I don't think Danny meant to do that, to be honest with you, but it was a great overtake. And the Ferrari is up to 9th. Be careful, Danny, you don't want to run over the yellow rumble strip, otherwise you'll get bounced off the road. In fact, he's gone a little bit too wide. And here comes Simon Whiting now to try and attack back. He's going to be in front at turn 6, and Danny gave a little bit too much racing room to his racing companion. The two of them on the marbles on turn 6. They just about hang on to the tarmac. But Simon doing everything he can to just keep inside the top 10. Howard Dunn, as a result, is catching these two. And Zolt Barabas has just moved away from the fighting duo. Nice line net out of the S's from Zoutenbayer. And he's going to be on the inside at turn 10. It's a narrow apex here. But they give each other just enough racing room until they didn't. But that weirdly worked out quite well. Zoutenbayer pointing Whiting back in the right direction, and that gives Zolt Barabas a 5-second buffer to go and fight with his friend, who's just 2 seconds clear of him in the form of Roland Jordan. What a race. Ali Pocket less than a second behind John Gaudet. And they are coming up to traffic as well. So they'll have to navigate that one, which might bring Van Buren up with Mikey Keating in a moment for 17th position. There's Dennis Penders, who has once again, very quietly and very effectively, just gone about his day and finds himself in the top 6. Will Fielding has been battling quite hard. I think the 30 kilos of ballast, it's not an ideal weight to carry around this circuit. Dan Hatton will be feeling the same pressure as well. But obviously Fielding has had a much less eventful race than the number 55. And Lois Mangle now is about to be challenged by Rakatamanga. He's had a good solid race so far, has Lois. As Mikey moves right out of the way and then loses a position. He actually went off onto the grass. Oh, Rover's got that all wrong. And that is one of the most bizarre attempts at an overtake I think I've seen this season. And Rover Rakatamanga, who had pitted early to avoid all of the carnage in front of him, has just thrown his advantage away. And I think that came down to him being perhaps a little bit impatient trying to get past Lois, who isn't as fast as a number of drivers in this championship, but is doing a very solid job in 14th and just going about their business. If you are watching, I hope you're having as much fun as we all are, because at the minute it is barnstorming. And look at that. We said it was barnstorming. Let's just... Come on, game. There we go. John Gaudet versus Ali Pocket for the race lead. Now Mangle has not moved out of the way of the blue flags. This is not ideal, but this isn't... Actually, it could have went a lot worse than that. I think Mangle did quite a good job getting out of the way in the end. So Mangle deciding to let them through at the next corner. And let them both through relatively fairly. But that's just going to amp the pressure up even more now. For Ellie to find a way past. Gaudet not really defending turn 10. But that Ferrari, I said before, it looked lively. That's a nice exit. Little bit of a wiggle from them, Aston Martin. Towards the mineshaft they go, but Pocket just couldn't take advantage of that wobble. And the number 88 is now hanging on by the skin of his fingernails. Nice exit, really picked up the throttle. Well did Ellie there, but she can't get through at the penultimate corner. But G'day's fighting hard and goes into the pits. Okay, pit stop time. So G'day feeling like this isn't the time to try and fight. Let's do the undercut and maintain position that way. So Ellie will carry on. That little fight did bring Chapman and Steve Hall closer to the fight, just a little bit. So let's just, I'm going to go and have a look at the replay. That's what I'm going to do. So let's have a look at the start, as Chapman just puts a lap on Mangle. So I just muted myself just so we can go back through the cycle of what happened at time 1. And I want to look at Rover Rakatamanga and Dan Hatton for that matter. So I think, yeah, we can go on board with Rover here. We'll go from that angle to see what happens. So he's on the outside line. It's always a difficult place to be in Kyalami on the outside line. Braked in a relatively fine place, and got hit by Will Fielding. And then that, it was the merest of touches to just spin Hatton around. No damage for the pair, but now we want to have a look and see when Will Fielding hits the back of the car, does he get a tag on the way through? Let's just have a look. You could argue maybe with that incident that it's a bit more of a racing incident because Rover's trying to turn left. And John G'day has a big moment coming out of the corner as well. Yeah, maybe that's... I could argue maybe that's a race incident. Maybe it's Will's fault. So I feel a bit sorry for Rover with that one. And we had all sorts of carnage going on after that. Cars were flying off everywhere. I'm not going to look at the rest of it because there was so much going on that it's almost impossible to remember everything that we've just seen. So we'll go back to the garage. We'll just have a look. So Ali Pockett's still leading. Dennis Penders is now up to second. So Mark Chapman and Will Fielding have both pitted. Steve Hall pitted on the previous lap. And John G'day is still circulating. Dan Hatton has pitted too. And he finds himself in 12th place in front, critically, in front of Rover Rakatamanga, who just shows you how much time he lost from his spin, and Van Buren, who had that damage from earlier on. But John G'day has comfortably moved in front of these two, so Fielding out of the pits and in front of Chappers. Now that's quite important for Chapman. I wonder what happened there, because Will Fielding's had a brilliant pit stop and got straight back out. So the BMW technically is in a net 4th position because Steve Hall's in front of him and has just emerged in front and has warm tyres and pressures in the right place. So for Steve, that undercut has managed to make sure that he's retained a position in front of Will Fielding and leapfrogged Mark Chapman. So great strategy from the Season 8 champion who runs in 8th place, and Ellie Pocket now responds. So race leader is into the pits. As we pass over the half-distance point in the race, the number 855 is in. Dennis Penders is second and has been clawed in by Roland Jordan. So either Penders has made a mistake recently or something has gone down. No, he's into the pits, as is Jordan. What about Zolt Barabas? There, everybody's going in. Is Danny going to carry on? Yes, he does. And will Howard Dunn carry on? Because I wonder, he'll want to lead a lap, I think, for the fans, and he does continue on. So he's probably looking at Danny thinking, come on, Danny, pit in this lap so I can have a lap in the lead. So Danny Zoutenbayer is your new race leader. Ellie Pocket is still in the pits, but has now done that pit stop. Where is John G'day? Danny Felix has gone off the road. He's coming out the final corner. I think Pocket is going to clear him. It's going to be very, very close as they come towards turn number 2. On the brakes, G'day has got the momentum and Pocket couldn't sustain that momentum in the end. And it was a good set of outlaps from G'day to keep himself in the position. He's got the lead, and these two are the class of the field at the minute. They're having their own little private battle, the debutantes. And it's game on now. 28 minutes, less than that to go. Pocket already trying to find a way through. She's got cold tyres. Pressures aren't in the right place yet. So she'll have to be a little bit careful of that. But she's looked very feisty in these 30 minutes of racing we've seen. That Ferrari dances all over the road. It's now a question of whether she can retain that speed and find a way past. Penders has been overtaken by Zolt Barabas, so Zolt has found some performance since pitting. And Dan Hatton is almost into the top 10. So Hatton's recovery drive is going quite well. He's not really losing that many points to Chapman as it stands. Looks like he's only going to lose 4, so he'll be delighted with that if that happens. Well, Pocket is really on the rear spoiler of G'day now. Let's cut to that action. Let's try and get on board with Ellie. So Mikey goes into the pits. That's wide from G'day. And Ellie's managed to force the door open, but she's just not got enough of a long side. The AMR V8 can't find a way past there as Dunn and Zoutenbayer continue on again. That's a great line. But you've got to remember that the Aston is quick in a straight line. And that's the problem for the 296. It's very well hooked up at this circuit, but straight line speed is not its forte. And G'day, that's slightly wide, that line from the AMR. He's coped really well with this pressure thus far, but Ellie is the one bringing it to him now. Into the left-hander. They go through turn number 5 at Barbecue Bend. Steve Hall's still in 3rd place by a second and a half from Will Fielding. Shapes for an attack at turn 6 at Sunset, but again, not realistically going to find a way through there. G'day's going to have to stay left. That was a good bit of racecraft, but she's going to try around the outside. That's brave. That's unbelievable. That is one of the moves of the season. For the net race lead, Ellie Pocket has gone round the outside at Clubhouse. That is a sterling move from the 855. And she's got the net race lead. And can she just pull away now? Because she's looked ferocious in terms of her race performance. I don't think John G'day expected that one to try and go around the outside. But that was absolutely beautiful racecraft from the pair of them. And Ellie Pocket's got the lead. That is honestly one of the best overtakes of the season. Ooh, she had a just as I was reflecting on that overtake, she had a little slide through the penultimate corner. Don't want to jinx anybody after that sort of overtake, but she is in 3rd at the minute. We've still got Danny Zoutenbayer and Howard Dunn at the front of the field. These two have not yet pitted, and Ellie now getting back up to speed following that fight with John G'day. I think for G'day, what the key will be for him now as he closes up on the brakes, and he went a bit deep there. I thought it was a bit late on the brakes. Is to just try and stay at a reasonable distance within Pocket and just make sure that they're there or thereabouts. If there's any mistakes, he could be in, but Ellie's just found half a second in that first sector, which is phenomenal. So Ellie leads in terms of the net lead at the moment. Penders is now back with Barabas, and Roland Jordan has joined in the fun. So he's in 10th position, and Dan Hatton is doing some good times compared to this next group that we're following. The only problem for Dan is that I'm going to estimate about 15 seconds away from these drivers, so he doesn't have enough time at that rate to catch them. And the worst thing for him is that he's being caught by Rover Rakitamanga. So those two trying to recover back to the top 10 if they can. Realistically, it's hard to predict where Danny Zoutenbayer and Howard Dunn are going to feed out. And is that Howard Dunn in the pits? No, I thought it was, but it turns out it wasn't. Mikey's cleared his stop and go penalty. He is in last place at the moment. But whilst that might be a little bit frustrating for him, he's still there, and that's the most important thing. Dougie Benyon not very pleased with Steve's incident that he had with Steve Hall earlier on, so that might be something to be reviewed by the stewards. But Steve is running in that third position with Willfield in fourth. Then it's Mark Chapman in fifth, and then this trio of cars. Barabas leads the field in 8th place, and then it's Penders, and then it's Jordan, who's been up and down like a yo-yo this evening, has Roland. But I think he's shown quite good speed in that Mustang. He's been driving very solidly. We did have 3 Mustangs in the race earlier, but sadly we did lose one in the form of Chris Harris. Clearly been called away. He had that massive accident, did Chris. We didn't actually see what happened to him. We just cut to his car being in the wall. So Chris is retired and Dougie Benyon is also out of the race. Those are the 2 retirements from the race at present. Hatton there in 11th place. Rakatamanga's 12th. Van Buren is 13th. So getting his damage fixed has clearly set him back quite a few spots. Nick Haug is 14th. And Howard Dunn, to the dismay of the home crowd, will not be leading a lap. And I think everybody will be pelting stones at Danny Zoutenbayer from the home crowd for denying the number 23 that opportunity. So what that does is it brings Eddie now into 2nd position. Almost certainly going to be in the lead of the race. She's 3 seconds in clear of John Gaudet, who I think is being caught by Steve Hall here. And Will Fielding is tracking very nicely. Chapman is in 6th position at the minute. As Howard Dunn, is that him getting up to speed? I think it is, yeah. So he's had his pit stop. He's going to be behind the battling trio. There's Roland Jordan. And Dunn now gets up to speed. So he's going to be a few seconds away from that group, but he'll have much fresher tyres than the group he is battling. Did that look like he cut the pit lane exit there? I know that there's been a few penalties for that this season, so I hope for the sake of the camera crew that was a, let's call it a false projection from the screen. But I dare say it wasn't. So Howard Dunn in 10th position, 6 seconds away from that fight. So don't rule out Howard getting a little bit higher up in the order. And Danny Zoutenbayer does make that pit stop. So Dan's decided it's time to get on a new fresh set of boots. Now Dan was a bit further ahead of Howard Dunn. I'm just wondering where he will feed out in relation to this trio of Barabas, Penders and Jordan. I think realistically he's going to come out behind Chapman. I think he'll be in front of Barabas if my estimations are correct. They're usually wrong. But Will Fielding now starting to bring the pressure onto Steve Hall. So Steve, who I thought was catching Gaudet earlier, no longer is. And that gap's just stretched out a little bit more. Seemingly like the groups have just quietened down a little as the 2 McLarens fight over 14th place. The other McLaren of Danny Felix is down in 19th at the minute, not having the best of days today, is Danny, after his almost fantastic podium at Bathurst. He was so unlucky to not have a fighting chance for that as Whiting shapes for a move at turn 10, but Howe defends the inside line as they go through 10 into 11. I think this is going to be either at the mine shaft or at the Crocodiles. On the outside line is Whiting. He's going to be brave there. And Haug just cuts him off. That's the second time I've seen Haug do that. But Whiting is a seasoned veteran and he's going to have the inside line at the penultimate corner. Unless Haug is daft, which he isn't, he lets the other McLaren go. And Simon now moves into 14th place. But a lot of promise in this race for Simon. Just hasn't quite worked out for him. the race just moves into the next phase now. But as I was saying, I do see this quite a lot from drivers who should be getting really strong results, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to happen for them. Like Simon, I've talked about before, is a really strong driver, someone with a lot of ability. But I don't believe I've ever, sadly, seen him take a race victory from what I recall. Certainly not in terms of when I've commentated on him. I know he has won races previously. I think, actually, sorry, my apologies to Simon, because I do remember the last time he won. It was actually the first ever race I commentated on for the championship back at Spa in season 8. He had a big fight that day, did Simon, with I think it was Danny Zoutenbayer actually on that day. So I think it was Steve Hall as well. They had a really big fight for the race victory. So that's the last time that Simon Whiting won a race in this championship, and I feel like it's been going on for too long. I think it's due to burst at some point. We just need the right conditions for it to happen. But I don't want to say anything bad about Simon. He's a good competitor, and he is a valuable addition to the championship. And I'm just glad to see him back racing tonight. It might not have been the way he wanted it to have gone so far, but the speed is still there. It's just whether we can translate that, and whether he's going to be back for the final 2 races of the season whilst we watch this fight for what is second place. So I think, yeah, John Gaudet has had a little moment somewhere, and Ellie Pocket is 7 seconds up the road. She's on her way to being the first woman ever to win a race in ACC Race Nation, and there's been some wonderful results so far in this championship. There've been some really fascinating results and some standout drives, but I think we can just continue adding to the narrative, can't we, with the first woman ever winning in ACC. It'd be just a really nice addition to the championship. She'd acquitted herself really nicely this evening at Kyalami, but still a quarter of the race to go, and I do have, sadly, a tendency to curse people, and I don't wish to do that. John Gaudet puts a lap on Lois Mangle, who is certainly having his best race since he joined the championship. Might not have the raw speed, but he's been, well, until that incident just then, because that happened before I started talking about him, so no curse this time. It wasn't the most consistent race I'd seen from him, but he's going to have to go and get that damage fixed, and Roland Jordan is now fighting with Danny Zoutenbayer. So Danny Zoutenbayer has slotted in behind this group, and Danny looking to the inside, but Jordan goes for a late move. Let's try and get on board with somebody. Yeah, oh, good lord. Right, tell you what we'll do. As Gaudet has another little slide out of the corner. Zoutenbayer really hassling the back of the Mustang. You can just see that the Ferrari just has this agility that the other cars are kind of struggling to keep up with, really. It's just because of the engine layout. It's just so well suited to that car. But the problem for Danny is that he's in a Ferrari and the car in front of him is in a Mustang. And in the straights, as I've banged on about for the last few seasons, that Mustang is imperious. It's incredibly fast. It just has an advantage over the whole field. Even if you're carrying ballast, it is seemingly right there to be a pain. Dan Hatton is right on the back of Howard Dunn, so this is shaping up to be a battle to get Dan back in the top 10. Zoutenbayer looks to the inside. He tries to make a late lead. Is that... That's Jacob Byford Drew. The colour scheme was so similar to Will Fielding's BMW, but it would have been a massive accident had he have lost that much time. Des Pender's going a little bit wide there. Have a little look at Dan Hatton's battle with Howard Dunn. Oh, that was an awkward line for the Mustang. Oh, he's going to look to the outside line accidentally at turn 10. Little bit of a wobble from Dunn coming out of the corner. He's on the wrong line, actually, for the mine shaft. He's got the line now. He should be able to defend the inside at turn 13, but Hatton will look to the outside line. He's going to try it. It's an opportunity for the Mustang if he can just keep his nose there. He might just give Dunn something to think about into the right-hander, which he does do, and Dunn ran very wide, but just about held it all together. Cut forward. Here's Roland Jordan. Diving one down the inside, and Pender's just left the door open, really. Tries to do the switchback. Nice car placement from the Ferrari man. But he just leaves himself a little bit too much racing room for Jordan to sweep through into 7th place. He is no longer in a Hungarian sandwich, which, if we think about the national food of Hungary, which is a potato pancake, is appropriate. He's no longer in that pancake anymore. And Dennis Penders is into 8th position and now is in a two-way Ferrari fight. Ooh, a little slide for Zoutenbayer out of turn 7 at Clubhouse. And Zoutenbayer always seems to get a very good run out of the S's and just is in a position to put his nose there, and they all Constantine are up because they've caught back up to Mikey, who is now catching Lois Mangle for 17th place. And that's all to play for. Dan is... Do you know something? These two, if they just put their squabbles aside, they could catch this group. They're only 10 seconds behind now because these four are really fighting hard. Oh, Jordan's going to catch Mangle at the wrong time. Just about got through. Penders followed him through, as did Zoutenbayer. And Steve Hall has closed the gap down to John Godet. That's 1.3 seconds, and he's being tracked hard by Fielding here. Penders having to defend from Zoutenbayer once more. It's almost impossible to keep an eye on all of the action. Oh, Penders is fighting for the rear grip there. You could see the red and white Ferrari just breaking traction every time he tried to put the power down out of turn 5 at Barbecue Bend. But this is proving... Oh, Zoutenbayer's got it wrong, and that's going to be an impact. Now, Zoutenbayer's going to let him go, and they had to wait for Mikey to come through, and that's now going to bring the squabbling duo for the last spot in the top 10 into their sights, because they can see them. So what was a quartet has just broke out into 2-2s. And that's a nice line from Hatton. That's a good move, and he's going to go through. There's an accident in front of them, and that's Byford Rue. Whoa! That was unbelievable what just happened there with Byford Rue was in the middle of the road. Mangle's gone back to the pits. We're going to have to get a replay on that because that was bizarre. I have no idea what's just occurred then. That was fabulous car control from Hatton and Dunn to avoid it. It was a good job that Hatton got the move made before they got to that incident, because that could have been... Well, it could have been a serious accident, put it that way. But Hatton gets himself into the top 10. And now that that quartet is broken up into two pairs of Barabas and Jordan, the two Hungarian friends having a good time together, and then the Belgian and the Dutchman having a huge squabble over 8th. If they keep this up, Hatton will catch them. And Penders, I think, is going to go defensive into 6. He's staying in the middle of the road, so he's not really giving Zoutenbayer an opportunity. And Zout has gone just a touch deep over the marbles there. And there's another fight going on for second place. Godet is now less than a second in front of Hall and Fielding, but Penders is sliding the car all over the road. There you go. There's proof of it right there. G'day has just lost a little bit of edge in terms of his raw speed. And Steve Hall is right with it. And there's Altenbayer trying to find a way past. He's trying to get the power down, but he just can't get through. We've been in this position before. Ali Pocket hasn't been in this position before in ACC Race Nation. She is 7.5 minutes away from a debut victory. We've had a number of debut victories this season. We've had Will Fielding, we've had Dan Hatton. It's just been one of those seasons where everybody has been brilliantly competitive, and it really has shown. And it's such a lovely thing to see. It really is. Even had Jordan Harding getting his first win as well. Let's not forget. Back at round 8 at the Red Bull Ring. So are we about to see a fourth winner? Fourth brand new winner of the season and second debutant of the season to do it. So don't forget we had Will Fielding back at round 1 as Penders has been overtaken at long last by Danny's Altenbayer. It was a good defence from Penders, but just couldn't put up enough of a fight in the end to maintain 8th, and he's going to have to just keep his head down because Hatton is only 3 seconds away, so Hatton could still find more points here. Will Fielding, I think, has been staring at the back of that Ferrari for the entirety of this second stint. He just hasn't been... Oh, Fielding! Has he got it saved? He's just about saved it. Well, he's not looking at the rear spoiler of that car anymore. I thought for a moment he was going into the wall. Great car control. It wasn't. I didn't curse it before anybody says it. I didn't. But like, that was phenomenal car control. I've not seen anyone have a car that sideways through the penultimate corner and gather it all together. But for Will, that will have shook him up. It brings Chapman a little bit closer to 4th position, but oof, take a breath. Less than 6 minutes to go. And this is good news for Steve Hall now because he doesn't have to think about the car behind. He can focus fully on going after John G'day. And wouldn't that be a turn up for the books? Steve Hall finishing in 2nd place, his best finish in a very long time. We talked before about Simon Whiting's last win in the championship. I'm going to have to just try and dig through my own mind to remember when Steve Hall's last win was. There's Roland Jordan right there, getting himself ready to try and find a way past his mate. Because of course for Steve, we didn't see him basically through the entirety of last season. It's only this season he's finally been able to reappear, and Simon White's gone off the road, gets back on track, lets the race runners past who are fighting over 2nd place. Not been Danny Felix's race tonight, but that does happen sometimes. You know, some tracks just for whatever reason don't suit you. Rakatamanga's done a good job. I think he's done a really solid drive this evening. Now, there is something that my brain is just trying to work out, because I have a process in my head of how I remember a lot of information, and I kind of have to view everything in an image, really. And I remember that Steve has had a number of podiums. I'm just trying to think if I've commentated on him as well, of having a race win. He definitely won races in his championship winning season. I'm just trying to gather if he had it. I don't think I've seen a race win from Steve. I think the last race win he had was back in season 8, if memory serves me correctly. So he's getting back to the front. That's what he's doing. It's been a long journey back to the front of the field for Steve, but he's been absolutely solid tonight. And I think with Steve, one of the ways that he drives and the way he calculates his drives is that he can be a little bit cautious at the start. That's not a criticism, by the way. It's just he's just feeding his way into the race, and then when he's felt his way through and he's got the hang of it, as he almost runs off the road, as he feels his way into it, he finds his speed and then he gets right up to it from that point forward. I think that's why he's so consistent. That's why you don't really see him having any... You know what, I'm going to stop that sentence there. That's what I'm going to do. I don't want to curse anybody. There's Danny Zattenbayer running in 8th position. Dan Hatton has got his Mustang onto the back of 9th position now of Dennis Penders. There's Hatton and there's the Ferrari. Now this is going to be a little bit more difficult for Penders to defend from, because Hatton, one, has got a championship he's trying to find for the first time ever. But two, he's got a Mustang compared to the Ferrari. And we're about to go... So these are the closest fights on the track. You can see on the timing tower, Rakatamanga versus Dunn, Dan Hatton and Penders, and Nick Haug. To be fair to Nick Haug, he's actually kept in contact with Simon White, and so credit where it's due for the number 25. He has kept Simon honest to be the leading McLaren driver, because Danny Felix is in 19th and isn't going to move from the bottom spot now. Lewis Mangle has since been overtaken by Mikey. Hasn't really had the chance to make an impact. Byford Rees had a quiet race. And Ellie Pocket is on the final lap. There she is, in the race lead. 1 lap to go. Steve Hall has been following G'day all the way through these last 10 minutes, really. He's just going to have to hope that he can apply enough pressure to see if he can find his way up to 2nd place, which would be his best result in at least 2 seasons. If not, it'd be matching his best results so far in the championship in season 12. Roland Jordan's right there with Barabas. Hatton is haunting the back of Penders right now, who has a slide mid-corner at turn 15. Now for Hatton, it's all about getting this exit spot on. If he can do that, he's very close to the Mustang to the back of the Ferrari. If he can just stay close enough, he's got an opportunity to send it down the inside at turn 1. It's a good exit from Penders, actually, to be fair to him. He's going to have to go for a Hail Mary if he wants to go for it. He is going for it. I said he had to send it down the inside, and that's what Hatton's done. He had to go for the lunge to get a place back in the championship race, and Hatton has got himself into 9th position on the final lap. Crucial overtake that. Rakatamanga is still trying to find a way past Howard Dunn, but I'm going to cut forward to another monumental drive from a debutant this season, because Ali Pocket is going to make history by being the 2nd debutant this series to win on debut, but to be the first woman ever to win an ACC Race Nation. It's Ali Pocket. Here's your race winner here at Kyalami. A beautiful drive from her this evening. John G'day, keep the applause coming for him on debut. 2nd place, he's had a fabulous time of it tonight. Steve Hall gets another podium, which you'll be delighted about, with Will Fielding surviving the big scare in 4th place. Mark Chapman ends up in 5th. Zolt Barabas looks like he's going to win the Battle of the Hungarians, which is something that we've not talked about in Europe for a very long time. But Barabas will beat his friend to 6th place. Not by much, though, I've got to say. Roland Jordan right there, putting a lap on Lewis Mangle at the end of the race. So the 2 Hungarians, 6th and 7th. Danny Zattenbayer will be 8th place in the end. Dan Hatton limited his losses after that turn 1 incident and the spin he had earlier in the race. He only loses 4 points to Chappers in the end. So that's good damage limitations from him. Dennis, good result for him in 10th position. Howard Dunn is going to beat Rover Rakatamanga to the line. And still circulating out there, we've got Jeffrey Van Buren, the last driver on the lead lap. A bit of a unfortunate race for Jeffrey this evening. He got caught up in that incident earlier with Dougie. And after that, he never really recovered through no fault of his own, actually. So that's a shame for Jeffrey, but he's going to slowly come across the start-finish line in his 296 GT3. That's 13th place. And Mikey Keating, a solid performance from him. I think he's going to be 17th place, not 16th. I think someone's just left the session. And Mikey, the last car to come across the start-finish line. So Ali Pocket is your race winner for the first time in the championship. John Gaudet is second and a brilliant third for Steve Hall. The top three having a great drive tonight. Really well done to the three of them on the podium. Will Fielding in fourth place after the mother of all saves in the 22 BMW. Then it's Chapman in fifth place with Zolt Barabas in sixth position, just in front of his friend Roland Jordan in seventh. Danny Zoutenbayer is eighth, with Dan Hatton in ninth and Dennis Penders rounding out the top 10. Howard Dunn was 11th in front of his home fans, with Rover Rakatamanga in 12th. Van Buren was the last driver on the lead lap and 13th, with Simon Whiting and Nick Haug in the battle of the McLarens finishing a lap down. Jacob Byford-Rue was 16th, 2 laps down, just a bit clear of Mikey in the end in 17th. Lois Mangle was 18th. Danny Felix had troubles, not sure quite what happened to Danny in the end. He was 19th. Jamie Lee retired. We didn't see that actually during the course of the race, sadly, but Jamie Lee was 20th. Chris Harris had that massive accident at the start. That was a shame for him in 21st. And Dougie Benyon also retiring after the incident with Steve Hall that put him in the middle of the road, followed by contact with Jeffrey Van Buren. But that is that for tonight's action. 13 races down, 2 more remain. We, of course, have Laguna Seca next week on the 27th of May for the penultimate round of the championship. And then it's the big 2 hours, Nürburgring Nordschleife for 24 hours on the 3rd of June. Yeah, I'm going to watch the, just a couple of comments that have just come in there. John, I fully agree. Mega drive by Ellie, well done to her. Thanks, Jacob, really appreciate it. I am going to have a look at how you ended up in the middle of the road on lap 27. Hopefully when the game cycles over, I can see it from here actually. So let's just see if we can see that, because that is, I still don't understand how that happened. So if we just have a look. For the number 7, so we skip on through the field. Now Jacob has said tidy 7, so let's see. Because this was the incident that really made me recoil. Is that Lois Mangle in front of us? No. We come through the right-hander. I don't think it was lap 27. I think it was lap 26. If I can see a green car, are we going to be looking for a phantom accident, Jacob? Is this what you've told me wrong? He's gone off the road a couple of times. Then he goes off there. Ah, okay, this might be it. So all the carnage happens around. And the tyres have overheated at this point. Car sliding, car sliding. Jacob, you're killing me here. What have you done? Told me the wrong lap. We're never going to find it. And because of the way that this game works, we can't actually skip to a specific point in the lap. Is that a green card? Yes, right. That is it. It's lap 28. So maybe it was lap 27 for you, but the game classifies as it a lap difference. So, Jacob comes through the left-hander. Into the right-hander. Mangle's gone off the road. Oh dear. Oh! Oh dear! Oh, that was more. Wow! And look how close that was with Dan Hatton. That is a bizarre incident. I've got to say, I think Jacob, you've obviously reacted to Mangle coming back onto the racing line, but yeah, that's an awkward one. It's an awkward one for anybody, that. Yeah, I've just realised that, John, to be fair. That's on me, to be honest with you. But other comments that I can just see here, John saying he'll be back for Nordschleife. It'd be great to see you back, John. I know that you're struggling at the minute. I do pass my best wishes on. Mikey saying not sure what happened to him on lap 2. I don't know what happened to you either, Mikey, on lap 2. It was a bit of a weird one. You just ended up on the wrong side of the track. But yes, that was it for all of the action from Kyalami. As I said earlier, 2 races to go. The 27th of May, that's next Wednesday, same time at 8 p.m. British Standard Time for Laguna Seca. And then the Nürburgring, Nordschleife for 24 hours. Double points that day. Let's hope that Mark Chapman decides he actually will, sort it out and put a good championship fight in for the final race of the season. Because right now it's between him and Dan Hatton, and you just never know with Will Fielding. He's not that far away. He did gain points again on Chappers tonight. Not many, but he has closed the gap up to Hatton as well. So we can't rule him out just yet. But we'll find out how it all happens next week at Laguna Seca for the penultimate round of the season. I'm Jack Millington, your commentator as always. Thank you very much for watching. Whoever might be in the big wide world, have a good one. And we'll see you for round 14 next week.